Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Monday, November the 20th, 2023. Today, I want to return to a subject that I haven't really talked about for some time, and that is Meghan Markle. I'd almost forgotten about her, almost perhaps forgotten she existed. Then, going through YouTube recently, just seen a lot of activity about her. In particular, her appearance at some event. I think it was called the Varieties Power of Women event, and people like to show this video. And this video was really quite extraordinary. And this video showed her being in the spotlight, wanting to stay in the spotlight. I don't know, all these people, is it a red carpet or something? And these celebrities, they stand in this spot and they're supposed to have a photograph taken and then they move on. And you know what was extraordinary about this video is she just stood there and just wanted to be in the spotlight, and some person tried to take her out of the spotlight and she refused. She wanted to stay where she was and to keep posing in front of the cameras. And when you see that kind of behavior, you think of that word, narcissism. And I want to talk about narcissism in this video. And I want to consider: is it possible to find narcissism in the horoscope? What should we be looking at? Now, it's not a very long video. I'm not looking at very many charts, so I'm afraid it's going to be rather superficial. But the problem with narcissism is that it's everywhere. It seems that everyone is a narcissist. I don't know how long this has lasted for, but with mobile phones and the selfie culture, almost everyone can be accused of narcissism. I could be accused of narcissism. Here's me with this video. I have the insanity to think that anyone is interested in watching me. That I'm so wonderful that I can actually put up a video of myself spouting nonsense. That is fairly narcissistic, isn't it? So I thought it might be a good idea to consider what actually narcissism is. I mean, narcissism is a diagnosis. There is this book. Where is this book here, which I've got? It's some of you, I'm sure a lot of you have come across it. Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, DSM-5. This is the sort of Bible of abnormal psychology. So if we look at narcissism, this book has a definition of narcissism: narcissistic personality disorder. And basically, in order to be a narcissist, using this approach, it gives nine possible there are nine possible patterns of behavior, and you have to check 5 of the boxes, 5 out of the 9. So number 1, has a grandiose sense of self-importance. That's one possibility. Is preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love. It's another possibility. Believes that he or she is special and unique and can only be understood by or should associate with other special or high-status people. The 4th one, requires excessive admiration. Number 5, has a sense of entitlement. Number 6, is interpersonally exploitative. Number 7, lacks empathy, is unwilling to recognize or identify with the feelings and needs of others. 8, is often envious of others or believes that others are envious of him or her. 9 shows arrogant, haughty behaviors or attitude. So you've got to check 5 of the 9. But still, I think a lot of people are going to check some of those boxes. So, where do you draw the line? Where exactly does someone actually become a narcissist? And I think that in the description of narcissism in DSM-5, it does say something quite important right at the end. Because when we're talking about celebrities, and if you're talking about celebrities, actors, people like that, we often think that they are narcissists. We almost think that they're narcissists simply by virtue of who they are. If someone is famous, then they're almost immediately going to be accused of being narcissistic. But it does say here, many highly successful individuals display personality traits that might be considered narcissistic. Only when these traits are inflexible, maladaptive, and persisting and cause significant functional impairment or subjective distress do they constitute narcissistic personality disorder. So I think that is really important to realize. Narcissism has got to mess you up. And so that's that is a key point. It's got to stand in the way of you being successful. So we need to sort of bear that in mind when looking at horoscopes of people who have been accused of narcissism. But anyway, before I talk about narcissism and Meghan, I want to look at the astrology for today, which is today being Monday, November the 20th, 2023. So these are the positions of the planets for today. So you can see today, noon, the Sun and Mars are still in late Scorpio. Now at noon, New York time, the moon is at 0:45 Pisces. So we do have this changeover from the moon moving from Aquarius to Pisces. So Aquarius is quite a detached sign. It's an air sign, not so emotional, more into sort of ideas and quite independent. Then you go into Pisces, very different, sort of water sign, feeling, the chaos of the ocean, perhaps. So that changeover point is important. Now, the changeover in London happens at 2:29 p.m. So if you're in Western Europe, the moon is in Aquarius right through until the early mid-afternoon, and so really for at least half a day you're going to be in this moon Aquarius mode, and then it's only late afternoon and beyond that you start to feel the Pisces. If you're in New York, by contrast, the moon goes into Pisces at 9:29 a.m. So you might experience, if you're on the east coast of America, you might experience some kind of change around 9:30 in the morning. If you get up late, it's not going to bother you because the moon is going to be in Pisces all day. So if you're working early in the morning, doing stuff early in the morning, there's still going to be a moon in Aquarius feel, but that is likely to suddenly change around 9:30. If you're in Los Angeles, moon goes into Pisces at 6:29 a.m. So really, the moon is in Pisces all day. But although the moon in Pisces has this sort of reputation for being a bit sort of chaotic and emotional, the moment the moon goes into Pisces, it makes a conjunction to Saturn. So that's not quite so typically Pisces. Yes, there's going to be a lot of emotion around when the moon goes into Pisces, but it's going to be emotion that is controlled and perhaps understated and people are going to try to keep their feelings to themselves, or they might feel that if they are to express their feelings, then there might be a negative response. So it is a bit difficult with the moon going into Pisces. Normally it's a sort of a nice flowing place for the moon, but in very early Pisces at the moment, yes, there's emotion, but can we actually effectively use our feelings? It could be tough. Now, another thing going on is that the moon just before it moves into Pisces, and this kind of is more relevant if you're in Europe. Just before the moon goes into Pisces, a sort of London time. So at 8:38 a.m. London time, the moon makes a square to Mars. Then at 10:50 a.m. London time, it makes a square to the Sun. So if you're in Europe, then the morning. If you're in Europe, then the Monday morning could be quite difficult. Could be a lot of tension, a lot of stress, arguments, that kind of thing. So tread very carefully in the morning. I suppose if you're in Asia, then that's going to be later. Australia, New Zealand, it's going to be, I don't know, that's going to be more early evening for you. But so in Eurasia, there is going to be a time during the day when you do have moon making a square to Sun and Mars. In America, not so much, and unless you're in New York, if you're up really early, 7:50 a.m., you might sort of, I don't know, the moon squares the Sun, so there might be a few issues there. But I don't think the moon squaring the Sun and Mars is really important for you if you're in the Americas, unless you're up really early in the morning, in the morning. So that's the overall astrological picture today. I would have said that the day is dominated really by that moon conjunct Saturn, particularly in the Americas, maybe Western Europe. That's going to really dominate the day. If you're in Asia, Australasia, I think the day is going to be more impacted by the moon squaring the Sun and Mars. So sort of kind of like America, maybe Western Europe, the emphasis may be on having strong feelings, but feeling that they can't be expressed. If you're in Asia, Australasia, the emphasis is perhaps going to be more about a bit of anger. Certainly Europe as well, perhaps. So it kind of depends a bit where you are. And I'm sorry to confuse you with that and having to make you think about where you're living, but unfortunately, that's the nature of the beast. That's the nature of this doing astrology for everyone around the world. So that's a very narcissistic thing for me to say, isn't it? To sort of have the fantasy that people are really listening to me around the world. So we can all be accused of being a narcissist, can't we? Okay, so having done that, that's the picture for today. I want to look at the astrology for the 12 signs. So here we go. These are my star sign forecasts for today, which is Monday, November the 20th, 2023. Aries, you feel pressure to be out there in the world, being seen and heard. But is this right for you? It's important that you make your own decisions, and this can't be done when you're in the spotlight. So it's okay to take a step back and to consider your priorities. Also, there are some important details that need to be worked through over the next couple of days. Taurus, you need to keep going. At first, you might think that it's all a waste of time, especially in terms of your social life. But as the day progresses, people warm up and you'll have opportunities to spread your charm and grace. However, make sure that you read the room. The emotional environment might not be quite what you expect. Gemini, there's a lot you want to do, and your first impulse is to state your demands and take the initiative. However, you have to consider other factors, for example, other people and their needs, because if you only focus on yourself, you'll fall short of your targets. Yet, a bit of toughness on your part goes a long way. Cancer, you need a bit of breathing space. There's a lot going on, but you can't be in the thick of it the whole time. And if you can get away into your own space, so much the better. In the process, you can develop a new set of priorities. In terms of relationships, you may be dealing with a view of the world that is different from your own. Is this a challenge, a problem, or an opportunity? Leo, there is more emotion than usual, with the moon in Pisces conjunct Saturn, feeling deeply about the world and having to get into areas that are often ignored. At first, you might feel out of your depth, but once you get used to a higher level of intensity, you'll be fine. Long-standing issues can be resolved. Virgo, you have a lot of ambivalence about relationships. You know that other people can't be avoided, but you're reluctant to give anyone too much trust. And with a Moon-Saturn conjunction in Pisces, your opposite sign, the situation comes to the fore. I suppose the terms of engagement have to be negotiated. Libra, it feels like a lot of effort, and you probably start the day in a fairly negative frame of mind. But you're in a stronger position than you realize. You can control the pace of your work, and the things you say will be taken seriously. So if there's something you don't like or something you want done differently, then don't be afraid to speak up. Scorpio, today you're very creative, but in a focused way. You have a clear idea about what can and cannot be done, and you don't want to be too experimental. But if you want to be really creative, it may be necessary to take a leap of faith, or at least take the risk of embarrassing yourself. Cautious people can be a blessing and a curse. Sagittarius, there's so much you want to say and do, but now might not be the right time, at least in the sense of widespread interaction with other people. The moon is making a conjunction to Saturn, and this is likely to weigh you down. Perhaps this refers to responsibilities of a domestic and family nature which take precedence over everything else. Capricorn, today you are very precise, especially in your speech. You know what you want to say, and you don't use too many words. And you're helped by the fact that you're very sensitive to what is going on around you, allowing you to speak the emotional truth. Relationships can work well, but it's important that you're in control. Aquarius. Aquarians are supposed to be detached from the rest of the world and not bothered by the kind of things that make most other people crazy. This is probably an exaggerated view, and over the course of the year, financial matters have never been far from your attention, and today's Moon-Saturn conjunction gives financial discipline as well as insight. Pisces, the clouds are clearing and you're starting to see the overall picture. This allows you to work out what's important and give it everything you've got. I think certain relationships can be strengthened and improved, but in terms of career and business, you have a strong sense of what details need to be attended to. Okay, so those are my forecasts for the 12 signs. What I want to do now is turn to the I Ching. So, as always, I ask the question, what is Monday going to be like for those watching this video. So the first hexagram I got looks bad. Darkening of the light. Number 36. So the idea here with darkening of the light is that the powers of the powers of darkness, the powers of evil, are getting strong. They're in the ascendancy, and so that means that our own light can't really shine, and we just have to accept that. That's how we deal with this hexagram. But it's not really as bad as it looks. I mean, if you look at the bottom line, this bottom line of the hexagram, it's unbroken. And this bottom line moves. And it's actually quite a fortunate line in a way, because it's telling us that we're in a situation where we want to do our best, but okay, we're not being listened to. We're maybe dealing with inferior people. So what do? What we do is we take flight. And there's an association of this line with a bird moving on its journey. This bird may be a pheasant, and so it realizes that it's time to move on, at least in a short term, and it goes to have this journey and to do, a very clear sense of what needs to be done. So there are these inferior people aren't listening to us. Fine, that's their problem, and so we take flight, and we go on this journey, and perhaps it's quite difficult. In the sense of perhaps not eating. I mean, not literally not eating, but just going, renouncing a lot of stuff and just moving in a particular direction, and just leaving behind these inferior people. Maybe we'll come back when the situation has returned, but that's what we do, because if we just hang around, we might just, not be taken seriously. People may say bad things about us. Okay, fine. Yeah, if people want to take that view, fine. We'll just move on. And so this hexagram, it transitions to hexagram 15, which is modesty, and that kind of makes sense, doesn't it? It's a situation where we're not going to be taken, where people aren't really going to listen to us. Not a great time if you're a narcissist. Modesty means just keeping a low profile, obviously not boasting, not being desperate to get attention, just quietly getting on with it, and then quietly our own attributes and skills will be recognized, but we just don't have to make a fuss of it. Okay, so that's I Ching. Not as bad as it looks on the surface. Darkening of the light, that just means that we just have to perhaps move away from these people from the situation is not taking us seriously. Let the inferior people have their fun, but we don't have to be involved. We can just go on our flight, and then perhaps we can return when the situation, when the situation gets back to normal. And we certainly don't have to shout about our skills, because really they should be evident. Okay, so now I want to look at some horoscopes relating to narcissism. What chart do I start with? What about serial killer Ted Bundy? Apparently he was described as a malignant narcissist. a malignant narcissist, in the sense that he thought he was special. He killed a lot of people. He really didn't recognize that other people would be noticed. I think he was surprised when he killed people that people noticed they were missing. Yeah, he thought he was special. So I don't really want to go into the details of Ted Bundy. But clearly, if he was a narcissist, and he was diagnosed as a narcissist in prison, this wasn't just sort of a public perception, but he was a narcissist. So what in his chart might make him narcissistic? I think the first thing to do when you see a chart like this is to make it simpler. So let's just make this chart simpler by removing all the outer planets. I think that's, you can actually interpret a chart without needing Neptune, Pluto, Uranus. We'll just and of course we'll remove Chiron. So you see what happens when you remove the outer planets. You can start to see a concentration here. That all his planets except for Saturn were in a narrow segment of his chart. And that might be about what narcissism is about. It's one reflection of narcissism. Someone who is very concentrated on themselves. So when you look at the chart shaping, you can perhaps see that. You can perhaps see that in his horoscope, you can see his south. The south node. He's got the south node conjunct the Sun, conjunct the Mars. So it's all very focused on himself. So that may be how his narcissism is working out. So another person that is accused of narcissism is Donald Trump. Now, I am not saying necessarily that he is a narcissist, at least using the DSM-5 description, simply because one has to ask, does his narcissism seriously impact how he functions? I mean, if Donald Trump didn't have such a high opinion of himself, would he have got to be president? The answer is, I would have said probably not. But nonetheless, in terms of what his narcissism is about, if he is a narcissist, I think one would probably look at something negative and something positive. So the negative thing to look at in Donald Trump's chart. By the way, all the charts I'm going to be looking at from now on do not have Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto in them. I mean, why not? I mean, he has got Mercury. Sorry, he's got Venus conjunct Saturn. So, what does that mean? That must mean that at some level, he must have a low opinion of himself. At some level. Venus conjunct Saturn, it's how he perhaps relates to other people. One wonders about the kind of relationships he has with people, how close they are, how detached they are, and that that indicates that if you really are a narcissist, there would have to be some kind of early childhood issue, the way he was brought up. That's one approach to looking at him as a potential narcissist. So there's Venus Saturn, and discounting other people, and perhaps in particular discounting women. I mean, discounting them as human beings or them as being individuals, uh, objectifying them, as is the word is commonly used. So that may be how he sees it. So I suppose if you objectify people and you don't really regard them as being full individuals in the same way as you, then that could be seen as narcissistic. And certainly that would have been the case with Ted Bundy. But I think with Ted Bundy, we don't see that kind of thing like a Venus-Saturn conjunction. We don't see that. It's just more his total concentration. The concentration of planets in such a narrow segment of his chart that he just can't see. He can't see anything else outside that. Though in Donald Trump's case, it's different because it's like a Venus-Saturn conjunction. That might be the cause of any narcissism, but the actual demonstration of narcissism would be I think has a lot to do with Mars in Leo, Mars rising. When you got Mars rising, I've got Mars rising, but I've got Mars in Taurus rising. But I often feel that Mars rising, the way I perceive it, it's like you're viewing the world. You view the world, and you have a viewpoint to the world. You have a way in which you see the world. That's like the ascendant. That's how you relate to people. So when you've got Mars there, it's in the way. Mars is, perhaps particularly in a male chart, there's perhaps your ego, or just who you are. It's just like a big piece of grit stopping you from really interacting properly with the world in a sort of to and fro thing. I feel with my Mars in Taurus rising, it feels like a bit of grit. I have my Mars in Taurus, though. You see, it's not in Leo. It doesn't have necessarily have the sort of arrogance of that sign, Leo. But it gets in the way of having comfortable relations with the rest of the world, having Mars rising. And in his case, it's Mars in Leo. And I think would have thought that Mars in Leo rising would firstly make it difficult for him to sort of have free-flowing, comfortable relationships with other people. But and then in Leo, it's just he might reach a point where he sort of says, "Well, I'm special," and that may be about his narcissism. But one can have a big argument about whether or not he's a narcissist. And I do not want to. I do not. When you Google narcissists, Donald Trump he always seems to come up. So a lot of people think he's a narcissist, but the question is, to what extent is it messing up with his life? So someone else who is widely accused of being a narcissist, who comes up a lot in Google searches, is Kanye West. Now, I don't know really anything about him. I know that he was married to Kim Kardashian. He has particularly sort of strange behaviours and the sort of the kind of behaviours that one often associates with celebrity. But I think he goes sort of beyond that. So where is the narcissism in that chart? Well, you see, you've got a problem here because in astrology, if you want to find something, you can always find it. No, there's no Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto here again. I just want to play. Why do we need Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto? Yeah, they help, but let's not have Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. We can perhaps, in fact, see the thing about Kanye West's chart. You say, oh, you take out the Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Do we really need Uranus, Neptune, Pluto? Actually, I think we do need Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto with Kanye West's chart. Um, uh, Certainly, I think we need Neptune, because uh, I, so let's put the planets back. So there is Kanye West's chart, and you can see he's got a Sun Jupiter conjunction, opposition Neptune, square the Moon. Now that Moon square Neptune, Moon square Jupiter, Sun, it's not something I would associate with narcissism. Um, there's no Leo in the chart. There is this thing that the DSM-5 talks about, and that's differential analysis. It may well be differential diagnosis. People might have focused on the narcissism, but it may be something else. It may be connected with the Jupiter-Neptune opposition. So something completely different. This is completely different from Moon in Leo, Mars Leo rising. So there's Moon square Neptune, Moon square Jupiter. Something different. There's not an excessive concentration. So kind of what I'm saying is that if you're really going to think that you can find narcissism in the horoscope, there's not just one feature that you would be looking at. You've got to have different ideas about where narcissism could be found. Is it going to be about the sign Leo? I mean, Leo is often connected with narcissism. Donald Trump probably has Leo rising. Does Ted Bundy? Ted Bundy has Leo rising. So there is an association, but perhaps between Leo and narcissism. But it might be about extreme concentration. It might be about, in Donald Trump's case, perhaps having the Venus-Saturn conjunction combined with having Mars rising. But anyway, I want to now talk about Meghan, so many people have said she's a narcissist, but the question is, does her narcissism really mess with her life? Now, I'm just going to read that passage right at the end of DSM-5 again, just to remind you what I'm thinking about. So it's these words again. I've read this before. Many highly successful individuals display personality traits that might be considered narcissistic. Only when these traits are inflexible, maladaptive, and persisting, and cause significant functional impairment or subjective distress do they constitute narcissistic personality disorder. So, I think what we're saying here, if she is narcissistic, then I think there's little doubt that she's really obsessed with herself, but is it messing her up? It does seem that, as people have often said, that Meghan cannot read the room. She finds it very difficult to understand the absurdity of some of what she's doing, and this may be damaging her reputation in a major way. I think her obsession with the spotlight, in terms of that, for example, that recent thing where she wouldn't get out of the way, where she wouldn't get off for whatever, the red carpet or wherever it is, that suggests something a bit problematic. By doing that, she's causing problems for herself and her reputation. So I think in that sense, probably you could say that there's narcissism there. Now, as far as the horoscope, now I've talked about the potential for narcissism already in her chart when I've looked at it. So you can see that she's a Leo, not Leo rising. So unlike Donald Trump and Ted Bundy, she hasn't got Leo rising, but she's got Sun in Leo. Well, there's nothing wrong with having Sun in Leo. That does not mean you're a narcissist just because you've got the Sun in Leo. it's fine having the sun in Leo. Leo is the best sign for the sun to be in because the sun rules Leo. But what is perhaps an issue there is the fact that her sun is conjunct Mercury. So Mercury is the way we process information, is the way we sort of understand what's going on. It's our sort of, it gives us some objectivity. And maybe that Mercury is just a bit too close to the sun. And it's just preventing her from understanding what is going on. But I don't think that in itself says for sure that she is a narcissist. I'm thinking that we actually have to look at the moon conjunct Saturn, and perhaps that has a lot to do with it. That moon conjunct Saturn is, the moon in a female chart is going to be important. It's conjunct Saturn. There must be, and I think we're talking about sort of early experiences, something happening that makes her have probably low self-esteem. I mean, that would be moon conjunct Saturn. Even though the moon is conjunct Jupiter as well, the fact that the conjunction to Saturn just makes things something has been disrupted there with moon conjunct Saturn. If you're into whole sign houses, I know that from a Placidus point of view, that moon is in the third house. From a whole sign perspective, that moon is in the fourth house. So you could say Moon Saturn conjunction. The fourth house represents the home, the family, the depth, the roots of who one is, and it is towards the IC. So something, even though it is third house Placidus, it's still pretty close to the IC. I mean, I think it's starting to have an IC feel to it. So that might have something to do with it. And so she has that. Remember, it's like Donald Trump has Venus conjunct Saturn, and then on top of it, she has Sun in Leo conjunct Mercury, and that Sun conjunct Mercury, for some reason, in her case, it's just preventing her from just seeing the whole picture. But I think it is something to do with the moon conjunct Saturn. So that's Meghan. I haven't really said anything very dramatic about her. As far as her main as a final thing to say, her main transit at the moment is that Pluto is, if we look at what's going on in her chart at the moment, there's her Venus. Meghan's Venus is at 1308 Virgo, and Pluto is at 2813 Capricorn. So she's got Pluto almost exactly sesquiquadrate her Venus at the moment. And so Venus is the way she looks. And so it may be with Pluto sesquiquadrate Venus, maybe she's really obsessed with herself as a woman at the moment. The way she looks, what she's dressing, and all of this kind of stuff, and being quite obsessive about it. And this may be messing things up. And it may be, of course, Venus is a planet of relationships, so who knows what's going on between her and Harry. It's not something I've been looking at. I'll try and do an update on her and Harry at a later stage. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about Meghan and narcissism. I didn't really say anything particularly useful about Meghan and narcissism. The point is, it's very difficult to say, this one thing relates to narcissism in a chart. One has to consider a lot of other things, and astrology isn't the only thing. You've got to look at who someone is. Is someone a narcissist just because they're a celebrity? or is it something that astrology is not picking up? Anyway, thank you. Thank you for listening. I hope you found that interesting, and I'm sorry I was a bit vague on that. I should really have looked at more charts, and I probably should have given the matter some more thought. Anyway, I will talk to you again tomorrow.